The NFL season officially begins tomorrow night with the Buffalo Bills against the LA Rams, and one player on one of these teams is about to begin his massive breakout season and gain a ton of value in Dynasty. And of course, I'm talking about Gabriel Davis. Now, I've said on this channel that I was not convinced that Gabe Davis is the wide receiver 2 on the Bills, and I've even talked up Isaiah McKenzie as a fantastic flyer based on his camp reports, the athletic profile, and his price. However, over the past couple of weeks, I have been buying into Gabe Davis as a breakout receiver in 2022 because even though there are holes in his profile, the upside is just undeniable in his current situation. While looking at his raw numbers paints a picture of a subpar player, if you go a little bit deeper, you can find some amazing signals that could lead to a breakout receiver in his third year. Number one, he's a big play receiver, which is obvious when watching him, but also you can find that through his 15.7 yards per reception last year, which ranked 9th among receivers with at least 40 targets and was up there with guys like Mike Williams, Justin Jefferson, Tyler Lockett, and T. Higgins, all of whom were top 20 receivers in fantasy points per game. Also, according to Pro Football Focus, Davis was one of 14 receivers last year to eclipse 2 yards per route run, which is a pretty sticky stat and has been a great signal for potential breakouts over the years. Number 2, he's a red zone threat, which has been shown by his 13 career touchdowns on 125 career targets in 2 seasons, not including the 5 touchdowns that he has in the playoffs. He has 1 fewer regular season touchdown in 2 years than DJ Moore does in 4, and Davis has done that as a part-time player on limited volume. In fact, Davis had 13 targets inside the end zone last year, which is more than T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, and Tyreek Hill, the same number as Hollywood Brown, and 1 fewer than Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, and Mike Williams. Again, as a part-time player on the Bills. Then number 3, he has an amazing opportunity right now as the Buffalo Bills wide receiver 2. This is really the culminating argument for Davis's breakout season, especially when it's combined with the first 2 signals. He has already showcased on limited playing time and volume that he's an explosive playmaker as both a vertical and red zone threat, which are the most valuable types of targets for fantasy. But now you give him a full-time role with the possibility of potentially 120, 130 targets or even more from Josh Allen. Sign me up. I'm not going to sit here and say that all of his efficiency metrics are just going to hold with way more volume. That simply doesn't happen. But the volume is going to make up for any reduction in efficiency. Let's say he gets 120 targets and we'll keep his career 56% reception percentage. So that's 67 receptions. We'll just call it 70 for easy numbers and easy math. 70 receptions at 14 yards per reception, which by the way, his career average is actually 16.5, but we'll drop it to 14, puts him at 1,000 receiving yards. And then we give him 7 or 8 touchdowns like he's done the last 2 years as a part-timer, and you're looking at a top 25 fantasy receiver right there, almost as a floor. Any better efficiency through reception percentage, yards per reception, or touchdown percentage is only boosting that fantasy finish. Do I think it's unlikely that he has a Mike Williams wide receiver 14 season at 130 targets, 76 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns? Absolutely not. Williams is also almost a perfect comp for what you could be getting out of Gabe Davis, which is a team wide receiver 2 with big playability, playing across from a very consistent elite route running target hog, catching passes from one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Like, why do we not want that player in fantasy football? But the best part about Davis for dynasty purposes is honestly his dynasty price. While he's currently going as the wide receiver 18 in underdog ADP over the past 2 weeks, he is only the wide receiver 37 in our August dynasty ADP, which is almost shameful that the dynasty community is actually lower on a 23-year-old receiver in his situation than the redraft and best ball community. In underdog, he's going ahead of Amari Cooper, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Darnell Mooney, Rashad Bateman, Devonta Smith, and is neck and neck with Allen Robinson. Yet all of these guys are going way higher than him in dynasty startups. Bateman and Smith, I get it. They're better prospects. They're both the same age as Davis. I get that from a dynasty standpoint. But Amari Cooper, Allen Robinson, I mean, these guys are 5 years older than Davis, and we're expecting them to, at best, produce similarly to him this year. But we're taking them ahead of Davis in dynasty. And if you want to knock Davis for being a day 3 pick, then what about Darnell Mooney and Amon-Ra St. Brown? Sure, they've done more in the NFL up to this point in their careers, but look at their situations moving forward. Both of those guys are on bottom 5 teams in the league with mediocre at best quarterbacks. Mooney actually had 140 targets last year and was the wide receiver 32 in fantasy points per game. You know who actually was the wide receiver 31? Amon-Ra, whose team also not only added a former 1,000-yard receiver in free agency, but also drafted a first-round receiver this year. Gabe Davis is in so much better of a situation than both of those guys, yet is going behind them in Dynasty. The overall point here is that you don't really need to believe that Gabe Davis is going to melt faces in fantasy this year, only that you recognize that for a player of his age and in his situation is actually undervalued as wide receiver 37 in Dynasty, behind a lot of people that we expect him to actually outproduce this season. If he has a top 20 performance this year, you can bet that his value is going to jump at least 2 to 3 rounds in ADP by next year, which would make him a top 24 Dynasty receiver. I actually just recently bought him for a 2023 second and third in a 10-team Superflex league, and there's a bunch of trades in the trade finder that can corroborate that same price for him. Gabe Davis is so easily a buy right now for the production and the value spike that he's going to have in 2022. And I also think that these 3 other players are going to break out this year and gain a ton of value.